If you're to bet against the Boston Celtics, I think last night is why you bet against them.
It was hilarious that happened on the day after a Boston radio host asked if their championship would be hollow.
I think that's a very good observation by you. I had the same thought watching that game. I missed the beginning, again, track meet. But watching that game, it was like, oh, remember how easy this was all supposed to be?
they're gonna steamroll everybody, man. I don't know why. And this is on us too. At the end of the show yesterday, it's like, does anybody care? Anybody interested? No. But I know why we say
didn't
it.
Care? They got housed.
Sure, I didn't care either way. But still, it was like this happened to them in game 2 against Miami. The same thing happened at home. They steamrolled them in game 1. We all thought, oh, this will be a sweep, and then they didn't show up in game 2. Miami got hot. Now look, they're still going to win the series in 5, but there is fun. Like Boston has a couple games of these every playoffs where you just like, how do you lose that game? You just completely no-showed. They couldn't make a shot. Cleveland made everything. It's an embarrassing effort at home.
Yeah, they're tough because I think they could win the next 3 games. And nobody's going to bat an eye that they finish this in 5.
No.
They're such an odd team because they are capable of this, but then you know that they're so stacked and loaded that they can respond and win the next 3 games by 20 points each.
The interesting thing about them, and I'm glad that you asked Barkley about it yesterday.
Well, he's been bringing this up for a year, over a season, and I'm fascinated by it because their team is loaded. This is a great team that Brad Stevens has assembled.
And I know how you feel about Jason Tatum.
Overrated and gets 0 of this superstar treatment that we give to all of these other players.
Everybody else gets it. And it's just the theory is basically that how many teams in the history of the NBA have won a championship without a player, according to numbers, analytics, whatever, is viewed as a top 10 player in the league. Top 7, 8, 9, 10 player in the league.
But you know what? You know what I hate? And I'm sorry to interrupt you there. I hate that I agree with you, but largely we still get the national loud NBA voices. Well, we have to throw them in there. We have to throw him in there. They won 60 games. It's like, no, you don't.
Right.
No, you don't. They could be the 04 Pistons. They're just a team of really good players, and there's not a super star on that roster.
There's just not a lot of examples of teams like that winning championships in the history of the NBA. There just isn't. Like I would contend Dallas with where Dirk was at that point in his career when they won maybe falls into this category that wasn't quite the peak player. Not saying he was bad by any stretch of the imagination, just like Tatum isn't. But I don't know if we still considered him a top 5 MVP kind of perennial guy year in and year out at the time. Now, maybe I'm getting a little too aggressive there.
You might be. Might be a Quake take.
Sure. Detroit in 04, right, as the prime one, where it was just a really good team, but they didn't have one guy that was above and beyond everybody else. And hell, another team that would have been this had they not blown a 16-point lead in Game 7 of the NBA or Western Conference Finals was our Portland Trailblazers. We were built this way. We didn't have a guy that was, it wasn't the Clyde days where it was clearly his team.
No.
It was a really well-built team with a collection of pieces that worked well together. And none of this means that Tatum is a bad basketball player, but he's not. If you put him in any other market, I don't know if we have the same feeling or the same rush to push him into conversations that we do. You asked a couple weeks ago, like faces of the league and where we go post LeBron, KD, and Steph. And I didn't say it because of his ability on the floor necessarily. I just said it because of how many conference finals he's been to and the team that he plays for, that I wouldn't be surprised if there's a push to make Tatum the face of the league, especially if Boston wins an NBA championship this year. He's not deserving of it, but he's one of the most recognizable guys in the league because of where he went to college and because of the organization that he plays for in the NBA.
Yeah, I don't know. You've been right on some of that stuff more than me, and I watch a lot of basketball. But I don't know about that.
Dude, if they win the title this year, you don't think there's going to be that push from some?
He's already in all these Ruffles commercials, right? He's in with Barkley and LeBron. Like, he's getting the deals, but he's not an MVP player. He has been abysmal in these playoffs, but their team has been so good that nobody talks about it.
Yep.
Their best player has been Derek White by, like, a substantial margin. Here was Jason Tatum last night. Somebody asked him about the perception that the team is so good that people are spoiled and get mad when they lose games like this. They randomly lose a game and they get housed. Here was that was the question asked to Tatum and the narrative on the Celtics.
I mean, that's the narrative that you might see on TV. The idea that we have a super team. It's twofold, right? We didn't have a coach of the year. We didn't have an MVP. We only had 2 All-Stars. So they say we're a super team, but, we didn't get rewarded like we are. But, We know we got a good team. We're not perfect. We play the right way more often than not, and we know we got to be better. But, for, I guess, saying people that are spoiled from our success, we don't pay attention to those things. We just go out there and control what we can control.
If you cut off the MVP, the only 2 All-Stars, not Coach of the Year, if you cut that out and start with, we know we're a good team, yada, 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 that's a perfect answer. But he started it with the dumb stuff, this downplaying of being a super team because they weren't rewarded with enough things this year.
Yeah, did you have a deserving MVP on your roster?
Dude,
what are we talking about here?
If you gave any of the great players that you like, Kevin Durant, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, a young Michael, any of these players, you gave them that loaded of a roster, what do you think they're doing?
Exactly.
And, this team, they may win the championship. Nobody's going to bat an eye at that.
No.
But he is supposed to be the best of that group, and they shoot 23% from 3, and he just continues to not be able to buy a bucket. There's a weird thing there with him where we put him in this category, but then he doesn't get kind of the same treatment as some of those other names.
How bad was he in the NBA Finals a couple of years ago?
He was horrific.
He was abysmal.
It was, to me, this is how disappointed I was with that team's performance in that finals. It was almost LeBron James, J.J. Barea type stuff. What's happened? Is his brain broken?
What happened to Tatum?
And he also got drafted by one of the top-tier organizations who was just loaded with coach and general manager.
The only reason they were able to draft him there was because of the trades. They
were
not.
Trades.
It wasn't their pick. They were using Brooklyn's picks at the time.
He has had so much talent surrounded by him in his career in Boston, and they haven't won a title yet. This year could be different, but him not being quite where people act like he is why they are susceptible to those games last night where you go, what? They lost by 24 at home? Yeah. To the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm going to be interested to see where Minnesota goes in their series with Denver.
Big game tonight.
I hope if Minnesota gets past Denver, I hope we get Minnesota in the finals against them. Because I want to see that FU dog versus, well, you say we're a super team, but we've only got 2 All-Stars. I want to see it. I don't care if the Celtics win. Kudos to you.
Sure.
I want to see that Minnesota team against that Boston team.
In those finals, they had a 2-1 series lead after Game 3. They then lost 3 in a row.
Yeah, Steph got hot in Boston and
Steph
sent it
got
back
hot
2-2.
in Game 4, and then they went on to win Game 5 and Game 6. In the deciding game of the NBA Finals, when they were down 3-2, he had 13 points in that game. He averaged barely 20 a game in the series and shot 36% from the floor.
But post another screenshot of how Kobe talked to you last night in your dream. Just weird.
I'm just glad that I feel a certain way about Devin Booker, and now you feel that same way about Jason Tatum. I'm glad that we can get our overrated hate out.
I just see how people treat other stars in the league, and he's
very
just
frustrating.
How often do any national shows spend time on that dude?
The show before us just literally said that Phoenix is Devin Booker's team, and I about fell out of my chair. Like, what? The only conversation that's happening right now about Phoenix is Kevin Durant falling short, them firing their head coach, and where's Kevin Durant going to go in the offseason? Nobody's saying, how the hell did Devin Booker get swept in the first round of the playoffs? I thought he was a top 10 guy in the league.